Just to follow up, if we could go down the line to our candidates related to the labor question. Right now in Connecticut, state labor contracts, the legislature can opt to vote on them, or they can opt not to vote on them. Is that the way it should be, or should the legislature vote on whether to approve labor contracts? And if we could kind of go down the line, starting with you,
Sure,
Ms.
sure.
Palmer.
I still believe that it needs to be taken on a case-by-case basis. Many of the contracts that are negotiated are solidly agreed to by both sides, so that you're just taking up time by taking that vote, because you know from the position of the parties that it's going to sail through or it's going to fail. It's pretty obvious going into the situation what the outcome is going to be. Occasionally there is a significant controversy, and I think in those cases where people recognize that a vote needs to be taken. Just to take a vote for the sake of taking a vote without any difference in the outcome, quite frankly, is a waste of time. And as we all know, they go right up to the last gong at midnight on the last night in deciding legislative issues. So I would say it's unnecessary, though it might be something that people would like to see just for the sake of having it. But I don't know if that's worthwhile, quite frankly.
Representative McCarty?
Well, I tend to disagree with that assessment. I think it is worthwhile. We just recently saw with some of the contracts that went forward with UConn that they were asked to come back and to revisit some of their planning. So I think the legislature has a role in this. It works very well on the local level. And Sharon, you can probably agree to this. We do have, when we negotiate the Board of Ed and the RTM, it goes forward for a vote there. So I do not see why at the state level the legislature should have that opportunity. It will help to rein in some of the costs if they're able to say, look, the state cannot afford these contracts at this time, come back with a different plan. It's part of the reason we're in the trouble we're in. Lauren said it, we're just spending more than we're taking in, and we can't continue in this fashion. So I would say that the legislature does have that right. It is currently in statute, and that it should exercise it so that we can keep the spending under control. It may, Sharon did point out, it may not always be necessary, but in the last, I can't remember when it was invoked. So we need to really start, other than looking at the UConn contracts, it's never used, even though it's there. Thank you.
Ms. Shaw?
Yes, I'm disheartened by my opponent's clear reliance on partisan politics in her mention of whether or not something will get through just on party lines. That is extremely disheartening to myself. And I believe that really the issue can be summed up very simply. We're talking about the allocation of public funds. That should be mitigated by the representatives of the public every time.
Next question goes to Ms. Shaw for myself.